There's a moment in almost every meaningful life where certainty disappears. The plans that once felt solid stop working. The identity you relied on no longer fits, and in that moment, the mind immediately labels the experience as failure. Asterisk, something must be wrong with me. Asterisk, but that interpretation is not only inaccurate, it's destructive. Feeling lost is rarely a sign that you've fallen behind. More often, it's evidence that you've outgrown the framework you were operating in. Psychologically, humans crave familiarity because it creates a sense of control. When life becomes uncertain, the nervous system reacts with fear, even if the change is necessary. The brain confuses the unknown with danger. So, when you start questioning your direction, your relationships, or even your purpose, your mind panics and says, asterisk, you're lost. Asterisk, but what's actually happening is a transition. The old version of you has reached its limits, and growth never announces itself politely. It disrupts. If you look closely at every major transformation, personal, professional, or emotional, confusion is always present first. Before clarity, there is disorientation. Before strength, there is instability. This isn't a flaw in the process. It asterisk is asterisk the process. The problem isn't that you feel lost. The problem is that you've been taught to interpret that feeling as a personal failure rather than a developmental signal. Philosophically, this moment is where identity breaks down so a deeper one can form. You cannot become something new while clinging to what once defined you. And yet, most people try to do exactly that. They attempt to force certainty, rush decisions, or retreat into old habits just to escape discomfort. That's how people stay stuck for years, not because they're incapable, but because they're unwilling to sit in the uncertainty long enough for a new direction to emerge. Being lost strips away illusion. It removes false confidence, borrowed beliefs, and external validation. It exposes what was never truly aligned, and yes, that feels unsettling, but it's also incredibly honest. This is the phase where you stop living someone else's expectations and start confronting your own truth. The discomfort you feel is not chaos, it's recalibration. Think about it this way. If you were truly failing, you wouldn't be questioning anything. You'd be numb. You'd be repeating the same patterns without awareness. The fact that you're unsettled means you're awake. It means your internal standards are shifting. Something inside you is saying, asterisk, there's more, and this isn't it anymore. Asterisk, so instead of asking, asterisk, what's wrong with me? Asterisk, the more powerful question becomes, asterisk, what am I being prepared for? Asterisk, instead of fighting the feeling, you learn to read it. You slow down, you observe, you allow the old structure to dissolve without rushing to replace it. That pause, uncomfortable as it is where clarity is born. And here's the truth most people never hear. The people who eventually build extraordinary lives all go through a phase where they feel completely unanchored. The difference is not that they avoid being lost. The difference is that they don't run from it. They use it. If you're willing to stay present in this moment, to stop labeling it as failure, and to recognize it as a signal of growth, you gain something priceless: perspective. And with perspective comes choice, because feeling lost isn't the end of your direction, it's the beginning of your evolution. Once you accept that feeling lost is not a failure but a transition, the next temptation is to look outward for direction. You start scanning for answers in other people's opinions, in motivational content, in relationships, in quick fixes. That instinct is understandable. When internal certainty disappears, external input feels stabilizing. But here's the paradox: the more you search outside yourself for clarity, the more disconnected you become from the very source that can actually guide you. Psychologically, this happens because uncertainty creates anxiety, and anxiety demands immediate relief. Advice, reassurance, and validation temporarily calm the nervous system. They give the illusion of movement. But they don't create alignment, they don't create direction, they only postpone the deeper work of reconnecting with your own internal compass. Every human being has an internal guidance system, a set of values, instincts, and standards that signal when something is right or wrong. The problem is not that this system disappears when you feel lost. The problem is that it gets drowned out by noise. Opinions, expectations, social pressure, past conditioning. Over time, people learn to trust external feedback more than their own perception. And eventually, they wake up one day feeling lost, not because they lack direction, but because they've been outsourcing it. Philosophically, this is the difference between reaction and intention. When your life is driven by reaction, your sense of self is always at the mercy of circumstances. Praise feels like purpose, rejection feels like collapse, silence feels like abandonment. You're not living, you're responding. And in that state, clarity can never stabilize because it depends on things you cannot control. Reconnecting with your inner compass requires a shift most people resist, slowing down instead of speeding up, silence instead of stimulation, responsibility instead of reassurance. When you remove constant input, something uncomfortable happens. Your thoughts get louder. Your doubts surface, your unresolved emotions rise. Many people interpret this as getting worse, so they distract themselves again. But this discomfort is not regression, it's access. This is where discipline becomes an act of self-respect. Not discipline as punishment, but discipline as containment, creating space for reflection, limiting who you listen to. Paying attention to what drains you versus what strengthens you. The moment you stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, what feels aligned with the person I'm becoming? Your decision, making shifts. The inner compass doesn't speak in urgency. It doesn't shout, it speaks in patterns, in energy, in how you feel after certain choices, not before them. When you ignore it long enough, it doesn't disappear, it just waits. Feeling lost is often the moment it finally demands to be heard. And here's the truth. No mentor, no book, no relationship can tell you who you are meant to become. They can point, they can inspire, but direction only locks in when it's chosen from within. That's why two people can hear the same advice and move in completely different directions. The difference is not the information, it's the level of self-trust. When you reconnect with your inner compass, you stop needing certainty to move forward. You don't wait for permission. You don't wait to feel ready. You move with intention, even in uncertainty. And paradoxically, that's when life begins to respond. So if you feel lost, stop searching for louder answers. Create enough silence to hear the one you've been avoiding, because the direction you're looking for isn't missing. It's been waiting for you to listen. When people feel lost, they often assume it's because they lack motivation, discipline, or direction. But in many cases, the real source of that feeling is pain, emotional pain that hasn't been understood yet. Disappointment, rejection, regret, betrayal, or the quiet realization that you gave too much of yourself to something that didn't give back. The mind wants to avoid this pain, so it labels the entire experience as confusion. But pain is never random, and it's never meaningless. Psychologically, pain is feedback. It's the nervous system signaling that something in your life is misaligned with your values, your needs, or your standards. When pain is ignored, it doesn't disappear, it intensifies. It shows up as anxiety, numbness, resentment, or a persistent sense of being lost. But when pain is examined instead of avoided, it becomes information. Most people treat pain as punishment. They assume they deserve it, or that it means they made a mistake. But philosophically, pain is not a verdict, it's an invitation. It forces you to confront where you compromised yourself, where you tolerated what you shouldn't have, where you settled instead of choosing growth. In that sense, pain is not here to break you, it's here to refine you. This is where standards come in. Your standards define what you accept, what you allow, and what you demand from yourself and others. And here's a hard truth. The level of pain you experience is often directly connected to the standards you've been living by. Low standards create short-term comfort and long-term suffering. High standards create short-term discomfort and long-term fulfillment. When you feel lost after emotional pain, it's often because your old standards no longer make sense. You can't go back to being who you were before the lesson. You've seen too much. You've felt too deeply. And trying to return to your old identity only creates internal conflict. The pain you feel is the gap between who you were and who you're becoming. Raising your standards is not about becoming rigid or demanding perfection. It's about becoming honest. Honest about what drains you, honest about what you will no longer tolerate, honest about the habits that keep you small and the behaviors that keep you stuck. This level of honesty is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. It places responsibility back where it belongs with you. And responsibility is empowering. The moment you stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what is this demanding of me now? You reclaim control. Pain shifts from something that weakens you to something that sharpens you. You stop seeing yourself as broken and start seeing yourself as in transition. Philosophically, this is the moment of recalibration. Life applies pressure not to punish but to reshape. Just as muscle grows through resistance, character grows through adversity. Without pain, there is no reason to change. Without change, there is no evolution. The people who emerge strongest are not the ones who avoid pain. They are the ones who allow it to raise their standards. They choose better boundaries, better habits, better self-respect. They stop negotiating with the parts of themselves that want comfort at the cost of growth. So if you're in pain right now, don't rush to escape it. Listen to it. Ask what it's asking you to become. Because once you let pain do its job, confusion fades, direction sharpens, and strength replaces doubt. Pain is not here to end you. It's here to demand more of you and to reveal what you're capable of becoming. At some point, after the confusion, the silence, and the pain have done their work, you arrive at a moment that is quieter than you expected. There is no dramatic breakthrough, no sudden certainty. There is simply a choice. This is the moment most people misunderstand. They think clarity comes first and action follows, but in reality, action is what creates clarity. Waiting to feel ready is often just fear wearing the mask of patience. Psychologically, the brain seeks certainty before movement because certainty feels safe, but growth has never operated on safety alone. If you wait for confidence to appear before you act, you stay frozen. Confidence is not a prerequisite for action, it's a byproduct of it. Every time you move despite uncertainty, you send a signal to your nervous system that you are capable. Over time, that signal rewires how you see yourself. This is where responsibility becomes unavoidable. No one is coming to rescue you from this moment, not because you don't deserve support, but because this phase of your life requires authorship. You must decide who you are becoming before the world can reflect it back to you. That decision doesn't require a perfect plan. It requires commitment. Philosophically, this is the crossroads between intention and identity. You don't become someone new by thinking differently alone. You become someone new by acting in alignment with a higher standard, even when it feels uncomfortable. Identity is shaped by repeated decisions, not by insight. Insight opens the door, but action is what walks you through it. Many people make the mistake of waiting for motivation, but motivation is emotional and unreliable. What actually changes lives is resolve, a quiet, internal decision that does not depend on mood or approval. Resolve says, I move forward even when I'm unsure. I choose progress over comfort. And that choice, repeated daily, reshapes your future. When you act without clarity, something powerful happens. Life responds, opportunities appear, feedback arrives. Direction sharpens, not because the world suddenly becomes kinder, but because movement creates information. Standing still keeps you trapped in thought. Movement pulls you into reality, where growth happens. This is also where fear loses its grip. Fear thrives in imagination, not action. The moment you take responsibility and step forward, fear either shrinks or reveals itself as a guide, pointing to the edge of your comfort zone, exactly where growth lies. And here's the deeper truth. Becoming who you're meant to be is not about one massive decision. It's about a series of small, courageous actions taken consistently. Choosing discipline over distraction, integrity over impulse, self-respect over self-doubt. These choices may feel insignificant in the moment, but they compound into identity. You don't need to know the entire path. You only need to choose the next aligned step and take it fully. The future doesn't open to hesitation, it opens to commitment. So if you're standing at this crossroads, don't wait for certainty. Decide, move, let action teach you what thought never could. Because the moment you choose to move forward, even without clarity, you stop being lost. You become the one who leads yourself.